Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today's episode is going to be Commander Quick Take. On episodes like these, I give you my initial take on a newly spoiled commander from an upcoming set. I'm going to talk about a potential direction to take that commander and possible cards to use for that build. I'll also go over some possible upgrades and similar commanders to this one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Also, make sure you check out the Porcine Stand, our limited edition playmat on Kickstarter that's only available for the 30-day campaign. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. But before we really jump into this, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. On episodes like these, it is just an initial quick take. This commander is as new to me as it is to you. And because of that, I don't have a finalized deck built for this commander yet. So the direction that I talk about today might not be the same one that I choose for a deck tech. And because of that, some of the cards that I'm going to mention might not be in that deck either. Alright, now that we're on the same page, let's get into it. Today's quick take is on Athreos Shroud-Veiled. Athreos is a 4/7 indestructible enchantment creature god that costs 4 white-black. It says as long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, Athreos isn't a creature. At the beginning of your end step, put a coin counter on another target creature. Whenever a creature with a coin counter on it dies or is put into exile, return that card to the battlefield under your control. So this Athreos, like previous Theros gods, is very durable. Not only is it indestructible, but most of the time it's just going to be an enchantment. As just a 4/7, it's not too big of a threat, so you probably just want to keep it as an enchantment most of the time anyways. Looking at its effect, it can be pretty powerful. At a base level, essentially on each of your turns, you get to mark one creature to gain control of at some point during the game. Now that creature will have to die or be put into exile, but since you're in Orzhov, you've got no problem doing that. Also, outside of Athreos, you can even put a coin counter on your own creatures too. Now with that, you're not going to be stealing a creature, but it's still going to benefit you. If that creature dies or is put into exile, you get it right back. So that's a good way to protect that creature or just to abuse its effect. If it has an enter the battlefield trigger or leave the battlefield trigger, you can take advantage of that. So my initial take on this is that you want a control type strategy where you eventually take control of your opponent's creatures and win the game. So let's jump into some cards to consider for this build. At 6 mana, Athreos isn't that cheap of a commander. And the sooner that we get Athreos out, the more coin counters we can spread around. So we want to run plenty of efficient mana rocks like War and Power Stone. War and Power Stone is very mana efficient, being a mana rock that costs 3 and taps for 2. Most of the time we want our mana rocks to give us back at least half the amount of mana that we put into them. Outside of mana rocks, we can even run some other sources of ramp like Soldavi Adnate. It has tap and sacrifice a black or artifact creature at an amount of black equal to the sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. So early on we can have the Adnate sacrifice itself to help get Athreos out quickly. But later on this card still serves a purpose too. I mentioned before that we can easily abuse enter the battlefield and leave the battlefield triggers because of our commander. So this can be a fantastic sacrifice outlet that also generates us mana. But after we get our commander out, we can make it even more efficient with something like Psionic Resonator. By paying 2 and tapping it, we copy target triggered ability that we control and we can choose new targets for the copy. So essentially for just 2 mana, we can get another coin counter on another creature. Doubling up our commander's effect for just 2 mana each turn is well worth it. With our opponent's creatures on the board, we're going to have plenty of targets for those coins. But like I mentioned before, we're also going to have targets on our own side too. A fantastic one in this deck is Sepulchral Primordial. When it enters the battlefield for each opponent, we can put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. Using and abusing this card can be a much more efficient way to steal creatures. By putting a coin counter on the Primordial and sacrificing it, we get it right back. And 3 creatures for just 1 coin is a ton of value. Another potential target for a coin is something like Grey Merchant of Asphodel. When it comes into play, each opponent loses X life, where X is our devotion to black, and we gain life equal to life lost this way. By abusing this creature's ETB, we can gain a ton of life and drain our opponents very quickly. And then Andrik Lunarch Marshal doesn't have an ETB, but can still be a great target for a coin. It has at the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. The same is true for flying, death touch, double strike, haste, hexproof, indestructible, lifelink, menace, reach, skulk, trample, and vigilance. So essentially this spreads around keywords, but the main one that we care about is indestructible. Because our commander is indestructible, this is going to make all of our creatures indestructible each and every single combat. So by putting a coin counter on Andrik, we essentially protect it and our entire team. And that can be important for this deck because we're going to be running an incredible amount of Wraths. Rout can be a fantastic one since we can do it at instant speed to surprise our opponents out of nowhere. And then Fumigate is a great one that can help us stabilize our life total. It says destroy all creatures, you gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. And because of all of our ramp, we can cast some one-sided board wipes like in Garruk's Wake. It's going to destroy all creatures we don't control and all planeswalkers we don't control too. Outside of our commander, we're going to be running other ways to steal our opponent's creatures as well. Something as simple as Beacon of Unrest can be very powerful in the right situation. It says put target artifact or creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, shuffle Beacon of Unrest into its owner's library. So this is a reanimation effect that we can get multiple times if we draw back into it. And then there's Command the Dreadhorde, which says choose any number of target creature and or planeswalker cards in graveyards. Command the Dreadhorde deals damage to you equal to the total converted mana cost of those cards, put them onto the battlefield under your control. So this can get us a ton of creatures if we're willing to take the hit. And then there's Grave Betrayal, which is a fantastic card for this deck. It's an enchantment that says whenever a creature you don't control dies, return to the battlefield under your control with an additional +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. So with just one board wipe, we can gain control of all of our opponent's creatures. But now let's take a look at some potential upgrades for this deck. The first place to look at some upgrades are probably the Wraths. The more mana efficient a Wrath is, generally the more expensive it gets. For example, Wrath of God is a 4-mana Wrath that destroys all creatures and they can't be regenerated, but it's nearly $6. There are plenty of 5-mana Wraths out there that are pretty cheap and affordable. So if you want to cut down on that mana cost, you're going to have to up the price a little bit. Another card to consider upgrading with is Selfless Spirit, which is currently $6.20. It's a 2/1 Spirit Cleric with flying that costs 1 and a white. It says sacrifice Selfless Spirit, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This card is very abusable with this deck. Much like Andrik, it can give all of your creatures indestructible. But unlike Andrik, you can do this at any time and you don't have to wait until combat. If you keep putting a coin counter on this, you can keep getting it back. And then anytime there's a Wrath, you essentially make it a one-sided board wipe. This makes your army pretty hard to deal with, so it might be worth considering for that price. Another card to consider is Helm of the Host, which is currently $5.18. It's an equipment that costs 4 and it costs 5 to equip. It says at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of an equipped creature, except the token isn't legendary. If the equipped creature is legendary, that token gains haste. So the first consideration for this card is that you will have to make Athreos into a creature by getting your devotion up. But after that, you should be safe equipping this since Athreos is indestructible. And then every single combat, you get an extra Athreos. And again, for each Athreos on the board, you're getting extra coins. Again, for this one, definitely consider if you actually want Athreos to be a creature. If most of the time you're keeping your devotion low, you can pass this one by. But if you're willing to get your devotion up, you can make this very effective. But now that we've talked about the cards to consider and potential upgrades, let's talk about some similar commanders. First up, let's see how this Athreos stacks up compared to the old one. The first Athreos was Athreos God of Passage. It was a 5/4 indestructible god that costs 1 white-black. It had that same text, as long as your devotion to white and black is less than 7, Athreos isn't a creature. And then whenever another creature you own dies, return to your hand unless target opponent pays 3 life. So there are definitely some notable differences between these two cards. The first thing that definitely stands out is the difference in mana cost. There is a substantial difference between a 3-mana commander and a 6-mana commander. The last time that we were on Theros, the most expensive gods were 5 mana. The first god that is spoiled is 6 mana, so is this an outlier or is it a sign of things to come? Outside of mana though, let's look at the effects. This Athreos can get your own creatures back to your hand unless an opponent is willing to lose life. The new Athreos can get your own creatures or your opponent's creatures back into play, but they have to have a coin counter on them. So they are going to be built around differently, but there are definitely some similarities in there too. A somewhat similar commander is Mathis Fiendseeker. It's a 3/3 vampire with menace that costs red, white, black. It says at the beginning of your end step, put a bounty counter on target creature an opponent controls for as long as that creature has a bounty counter on it. It has when this creature dies, each opponent draws a card and gains 2 life. So this one also deals with end step counters, but in a different way. This one incentivizes opponents to kill your opponent's creatures, and Athreos really does the exact opposite. But again, because of their similarities with those end step counters, there are some things that you can take from that deck too. Another commander to look to is Teriel Reckoner of Souls. It's a 4/7 angel with flying and vigilance that costs 4 white, black, red. It has tap, choose a creature card at random from target opponent's graveyard, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. So similarly, you're going to be stealing opponent's creatures, but this one is random. And again, the difference is that this one's from graveyards and the other one is essentially from play, but again, the creature has to die or be put into exile. Another commander that likes to steal creatures is Marchese of the Black Rose. She's a 3/3 human wizard with Dethrone that costs 1 blue, black, red. She has other creatures you control have Dethrone, and whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. So essentially, you threaten an opponent's creature, you attack with it, it gets a counter on it, and you make it die, then it comes back into play under your control. It's a different way to go about it, but again, there are things that you can learn from this deck. A final deck to look to is Selenia Dark Angel. She's a 3/3 angel with flying that costs 3 white, black. She has pay 2 life, return Selenia to its owner's hand. With this deck, you're really looking to control the board and your own life total, so you're going to be wrathing the board a ton. So you can look to that deck to find some effective wraths for this one. And with that, this show is coming to a close. So in the comments below, give me your take on this newly spoiled commander. Would you take it in a similar direction or in a completely different one? Also, make sure you check out the Porcine Stand, our limited edition playmat that's only available for the 30-day Kickstarter campaign. Once that campaign ends, it will no longer be available for purchase, so make sure you're backing the campaign before it's too late. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget Commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.